Quote, I take for granted that for the imaginative writer, the exercise of the imagination is part of the basic process of coping with reality, just as actors need to act all the time to make up for some deficiency in their sense of themselves. End quote. When it comes to its routine and structure, Ballard was more structured and routine-based than many writers. When an idea popped into his head which he saw potential in, he would always write a synopsis. Now, in the case of a short story, the synopsis would be about a page long, while in the case of a novel, the synopsis would be around the 25-page mark. He believed the synopsis allowed him to shape and flavor the story to a greater level than if he just jumped straight into writing the story without having planned it out. Following the synopsis, if satisfied with it, he'd write the piece. If not satisfied with how the story was taking shape, he could easily tweak it or discard it completely without too much lost time. Throughout his career, he would stick to a daily word goal of 1,000 words a day, doing everything possible to keep that goal, prioritizing consistency over inspiration. The great bulk of his stories were written with quite the ease. Furthermore, he would state that about 10 of his stories were written once with minimal editing before they were deemed as final drafts. Also employing his synopsis first method, he never struggled with writer's block or found it difficult to finish a story. What he did find, however, was that after he finished a novel or a short story, particularly when concerning a novel that occupied his mind for 6 months to a year, it was more difficult to shake and start on something fresh. There would be a carryover of weeks, perhaps months. It was like the end of a love affair. Ballard described himself as very much a 9-to-5 writer, and a typical working day would go as follows. After he finished reading the newspaper after breakfast, he would travel the extensive 2 feet distance from his armchair to his desk. He would be seated there around 9:30 and type uninterrupted until about 12:30. Later in his career, he would substitute the typewriter with longhand writing, which he found less tiring than typing. Then he'd go run errands or for a walk. Upon returning home, he'd make lunch and generally be back at his typewriter by 1:30, working until approximately 5 o'clock, again uninterrupted. Sometimes, if he was writing a section that flowed well and spilled out of him, he could easily go to 7. Generally, however, he'd call it quits at 5, ending the day with very stiff drink consisting of scotch and soda.